Hey friends, Becca here. I forgot to post my May reading wrap up in June, and so now it's already July. I'm gonna do a combination of my May and my June reading wrap up. I read 9 books, which thinking about it is still pretty good, although I think I would like to up those numbers for the future. It's just so hard for me to like get in the reading mood during the summer. I don't know what it is, but it's just so bright and sunny and warm outside that I'm just like doing other things. So yeah, if you have any advice or tips for reading in the summer, I feel like my reading slows down so much, but I want to exceed my reading goal this year, so I kind of need to step it up. Let's jump into what I read, and I'll tell you a little bit about everything and what I thought. To start off, I read Little Thieves and the second book, Painted Devils, in the Little Thieves trilogy. In the series, you're following Vanya, and Vanya was the servant to Princess Giselle, and one day she decides to take an enchanted set of pearls and uses that to assume the life that Giselle has, and so now she's kind of living this double life while Giselle is left penniless and on the streets. So she basically takes over her life. Vanya is a trickster, and she and her games are catching up with her, and one day she crosses the wrong god and is now cursed. So now she needs to find a way to break the curse so that she doesn't die. And this book is so fun. I absolutely loved it. I think there's some super iconic characters in this book. It's very unique. I love the story. This is YA, but it doesn't feel like YA. This is truly such a gem. I highly recommend this first book. However, once you get to the second book, which I was like so ready to start the second book after I finished the first book, because the premise, when you read the premise of this story, it's so hilarious. I don't want to share what it is because I don't want to spoil anything, but like the premise is hilarious, and like the first 20% of this book is incredible, and then it takes like a really weird turn where there's just like so much emphasis on like will they, won't they, if you know what I mean. And I didn't like that. It was like the main topic and like what they were constantly thinking about during this whole book, and I was just like, okay, this is like super lame and boring. And also a lot of the characters that I loved from the first book make like a one-page appearance in this book, and honestly like that kind of killed the series for me. The third book in the trilogy just recently came out. It's called Holy Terrors, and honestly I don't think I'm gonna read it. I think I'm kind of giving up on this series. I'm probably gonna unhaul this version of Painted Devils and just keep my copy of Little Thieves. You can read this as a standalone, and honestly you probably should, because I think the series kind of takes a nosedive after the first book. So yeah, that was a little bit disappointing because this was like incredible. The next book that I read was How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. This is like a collection of interconnected stories in the aftermath and during a climate plague that is happening on Earth. There's definitely a story in this collection for everybody, and I really gravitated towards the more sci-fi stories where it's talking about civilization 500 years from now. It was so good. So I highly recommend this. If you're looking for some like speculative fiction about climate plague, climate crisis, a little bit apocalyptic, but also sci-fi, a little bit hopeful. It's got, like I said, it's got something for everybody. I thought this was really well done, and it was so fun to see the interconnected stories relating to each other over and across generations. They're not all related, but you'll hear about this family and this situation early on, and then way later in the book it's referenced again, and that's just like so fun to kind of see how all of this stuff is interconnected, and I really enjoyed this one. Next, I read The Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the combination of all the books. I didn't actually read it from this book, but I just like having this copy because it's beautiful. But I read the first 2 books in this series. I also listened to it on audiobook by Andy Serkis, which is one of the best audiobook experiences I've ever read. I would go on my morning walks and put it on, and I was like, I am walking to Mordor. I am on this adventure with them. I forget that he's just one person because he does such a phenomenal job in this audiobook that it sounds like you have a full cast of characters. Okay, so I read the first 2. The Fellowship of the Ring, it's good. It's setting up a lot. You're kind of just like getting started. You're getting started. So it was a little bit slow for me. So I rated it 4 stars. It wasn't perfect. However, Two Towers, that book is all gas. Like I was like edge of my seat. I couldn't stop reading. The stakes are so high. You're really starting to get into like the meat of the story. And I know Return of the King is also going to be next level. So I'm very excited to read the 3rd book this month. But yeah, definitely a classic. We are also currently on our rewatch of these movies, so it's been fun to read the book and then watch the movie. And so we're gonna start The Two Towers tonight, which I'm so excited about. With my May book club, we read The Sirens. Let me just take a second to talk about this cover and these sprayed edges. Are those not like incredibly gorgeous? This is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. I had to own it. Although that's about the only positive thing I can say about this book. So this is a story that follows multiple women across multiple generations. And it's also sort of following the history of Australia and like the prisoner transports to Australia. So I tried to read Wayward by this author, which is another similar story a couple of years ago when it came out, and I just didn't like it at all. And so I was like, I will give an author a second chance always. So picked this one up with my book club, and we all kind of agreed that this book was just like extremely lackluster. Just things weren't making sense, and also it just like wasn't that interesting. Like what we had hoped that the story would have been and could have been, it wasn't any of that. Unfortunately, I just don't think this author is for me. The concepts of her books are incredible, but the execution just really has fallen flat for me for 2 books in a row, and so I probably won't be picking up any other books by this author. So the next book I read was Forged by Magic by Jenna Wolfhart. I think this is one that I got on Kindle Unlimited, and this is following an orc who is cursed, and she is sent out on a mission to hunt the last of like the dragon riders. Her ship is caught in a massive storm, and she's thrown overboard and washes up ashore on this island, and of course is greeted by a super hot elven blacksmith. This is definitely cozy fantasy. I thought it was fun. It's not earth-shattering, and I thought it was cute, although it did take me forever to read this book. It's not a long book. I usually breeze through these books. I can usually read them in like a couple of days, if not sooner than that. But for some reason, this took me like over a month. I started this at the beginning of May. I didn't finish it until the very, very end of June. Again, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like gripping. There's trials, and honestly, I don't love trials in books. I think it's so overdone, and I'm so over that trope. Do with that what you will. Sometimes romanticize is hit or miss for me, and lately it's just been nothing but misses, which is so disappointing. For my in-person book club for the month of June, we read The Names by Florence Knapp. This is a story about a woman who is experiencing domestic abuse by her spouse. She gives birth to a young boy, and it's tradition in their family to name the boys after their father. And so the name Gordon has gone through many generations on her husband's side of the family. In an act of rebellion, she starts to think about maybe not naming him Gordon. And then the story shifts to this young boy and what his life looks like if his mom names him one of 3 various different names. So if she decides to go through and name him Gordon, if she decides to name him what her daughter wants to name him, which is Bear, and then if what she wants to name him, which is Julian. So you're following Bear, Gordon, and Julian throughout their lives and how their name has impacted their lives, and it was so good. This was an incredible book club pick, and there were so many layers to this story because you're following 3 different storylines. You're just like breezing through these chapters, so it's a very, very quick read. I would highly recommend this one. And then the last book on my list is actually a DNF. It's A Fate Forged in Fire by Hazel McBride. I saw that this was available on Libby, and the synopsis sounded amazing. It's a Celtic-inspired romantic fantasy about Amira, a blacksmith's daughter blessed by fire magic and destined for greatness. Cool. Amira has been hiding, waiting for the current king's death so she can claim her rightful place as the first queen in centuries. Her plan involves bonding with the king's dragon, one of the last remaining, to protect her people and restore the matriarchal rule of Tier 10 or whatever. Cool! Sounds amazing. Love that. The premise, I read that on Libby and I was like, oh, I've never heard of this book. I just read the synopsis, thought it sounded great, added it to my Kindle, and I started reading. Immediately, I was like, this is reading like Game of Thrones fanfiction. Like there's like lots of very similar parallels very, very early on. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like maybe that's just a coincidence. And then it kept going. And I was like, no, this is like 100% has to be Game of Thrones fanfiction. So I get on my phone and I start scrolling on the author's Instagram and I scroll and I see a lot of like House of the Dragon content, and I guess this like kind of originated from like House of the Dragon fan fiction. So I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I was like, am I biased? Because I literally just finished my rewatch of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. So I was like, maybe I'm just like primed for this to feel very similar. I can get past that because again, I love Game of Thrones, I love House of the Dragon. I could get down with some fan fiction, okay? And then I was like, this main character sucks. I did not like her at all. She was extremely entitled, and also like her motives made absolutely no sense. Like, why do you have to wait for the king to die for you to then take your rightful place? Because you need his dragon? Like, if you're the rightful queen, you're the rightful queen, period. Also, the only reason that she is the rightful queen is because she is blessed by fire, and they were previously a matriarchal society, and therefore, like, they had always had women ruling, but then they stopped having daughters, and they started only having sons, and therefore that ended that real quick. All of this is also told within the first 20% of the book, so I'm not spoiling anything because that's as far as I could make it in this book. I made it like 25%, I think, and I just had to put it down because I was like, first of all, this main character is extremely entitled, like in the way that she acts, and I'm like, girl, you ain't just because like you think that you're owed something doesn't mean like you can act this way, and like maybe that's her character flaw, I don't know, but it was super freaking annoying. So I was like, okay, I really don't like her. Second of all, your logic makes no sense with like, I'll just wait for him to die and then I'll go take my rightful throne. Girl, go get it, like, please. And then also, of course, like the enemy, this is what I struggle with in romantasy, is they see their enemy or their opposition and they're like, oh my gosh, he's my enemy, but he's so hot. I need to destroy him, but like he's so hot though. And I'm like, no, immediately put it down. So yeah, and also it's like Aemon Targaryen fanfiction. Like that's who the main character, that's who like the love interest is supposed to be. No. Hard pass. Like don't even get me started on my thoughts on some of these Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, Targaryen characters. He's the worst one. People be simping for this guy hard, that they're writing fan fiction and publishing about it. I can't do it. Anyways, that's my rant about A Fate Fortune Fire. I don't recommend, but you know, if that sounds like it's up your alley and you want to give it a shot, maybe I'm wrong. I probably could have pushed through and found something that I liked about this book, but honestly, I just was already annoyed, and I feel like when I get to that point, like I'm just hate reading at that point, and I'd rather just spend my time reading something that is interesting to me. And then that's when I read The Lord of the Rings, and that made me happy again. I would love to know what you've read in May and June. What do you plan to read in July? I don't think I'm going to do a TBR for July because I'm really bad at sticking with TBRs, and I really want to read a lot this summer, and I want to just like follow the vibe of like what I want to read, you know, like I don't want to have to follow a checklist. There are definitely books that I'm interested in. If you check out my summer reads, there are series that I'm going to try to work through this summer, but I have plenty of time to do that, and I'll read those when I'm in the mood for them. But I don't think I'm going to be doing TBRs anymore. Maybe I'll post something on my TikTok of like, these are the things that I'm kind of interested in this month, but don't hold me to it, okay? So yes, would love to know what you guys are reading. Let me know your thoughts. I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye!